My accents are all terrible, but Wallaby is the one that I feel like I can do a reasonable Australian accent because you go on a walkabout with your wallaby, and that's
Excellent.
the best I can do.
That's all you
That's the
got.
only thing.
Hi,
That's all I got. Welcome to the Metacast. We have our first guest in season 2 of the Metacast, so we are excited to have Jeff Davis with us. I'm not going to bore
Woo!
you. Yeah,
Woo!
exactly. I'm not going
This
to
is
bore you
season.
with an
Everyone,
intro.
no, it's not season 2. It's season duh.
Oh
It's
gosh.
it's season duh.
Part of season 2. Okay.
Welcome,
Season
Jeff.
Thank
It's
you.
season 2. So, Jeff, we'd like you to intro yourself because no one knows you better than you. So, let everybody know who you are, and we'll dig into your topic.
Thank you, Josh and Bob, very much. Wow, that first guest of the season.
First guest.
Nothing like starting off with the bar really low. So
Oh,
that's
don't you dare.
no, thank you for having me. This is exciting. So yeah, Jeff Davis. I currently reside in the Nashville, Tennessee area, a little town called Franklin. I'm all about like faith, family, fun. Apparently, I'm about alliteration because I just did that. So I started off as a professional musician back in the day when I was a youngster. Transitioned out of that when I realized, okay, I want to have a family. I want to have stability. I hadn't made my big break in a band or whatever, or in the symphony. So I decided to shift and pivot my career. Got into business and IT because music software at the time was going digital. So it was kind of a cool transition into the world of software and computing. Had an amazing mentor and friend who got my foot in the door at IBM. And I spent about 20 years there. And that was kind of where I got my whole new education. Got into all the things technology, server stuff, admin, project leadership, and what have you. Got into project management. And suddenly my joy was less joyful when I was going through PMP boot camp. And I was like overwhelmed
Ooh.
by like, this is a lot of heavy stuff. How am I going to, this just makes my brain hurt. Then I met these agile coaches in IBM and I'm like, who are these cool people and what are they all about? And I was putting Scrum and agile content into learning management systems around that time as well. And I started to like dig in, like, what is this stuff? And then it resonated. I was like, oh, I've found my language. I found my people. This is how I like to interact with teams and developers and these kinds of things. So never looked back after that. I got into Scrum Mastery and helping teams. And just, it's always about the team. Just how can the team be the best team possible? How can we be the best people possible together? So, and make a great outcome. Most recently, I was an enterprise agile coach in a big, huge healthcare company. Had a lot of things happen there that really gave me a lot of failure, a lot of learning about myself. And so, yeah, that'll bring us to the topic for today. It's kind of like all along the way, I realized the common thread in my life is as identity is a big one. This may sound a little interesting, but like how we're influenced or affected by our identity or figuring it out, and then how we're influenced or affected by evil, believe it or not, like what's within us and what's coming at us. Like how much are we really at the root, either trying to ignore something that's bad and kind of mask it and not really face it, or how often do we interpret something from coming outside as, bad or negative or what have you, and what is that doing inside of us? And so all of that I realized around identity. I used to think I'm a this because that's my job title, or I'm this other thing because it's what I know, or it's what my experiences have been. Where do we want to go? And how are we going to get there together? And what's the most effective way of doing that? And we can bring in things from the world of the agile movement, DevOps movement, lean, all these wonderful places, and even beyond that, right? So there's just a wide open cornucopia of things.
Yeah, there was a moment in not a moment. There was a time in my career when the title didn't matter anymore, and I thought it was just like age or whatever. And all I cared about was what was my responsibility and what kind of like how big of the change was I getting to do, and what you wanted to call me. I didn't care. Right? It didn't matter. Just like give me a big juicy problem, and I'm going to go run at that for a while, and that's what makes me happy. And I never thought through like what the drivers were that made that happen. It was just like I flipped a switch. Like, okay, I don't care anymore. But it's interesting to think about what the things were that made that switch click for me, and I'm never really, I tend to just kind of do things. So there's times I don't stop and think about them when I maybe should. But
Yeah.
so that's a thing that resonates with me about your story.
Well, I like what you said there about stopping to think, or realizing we should slow down, do some slow thinking. I love the Daniel Kahneman type of influence there. Yeah, I can relate to you. I'm like, just go do the thing. Let's make it happen, and we'll clean up the mess later.
Yep.
So yeah, that doesn't always go well.
I
Yes.
did a talk yesterday, I think, about personal branding, and I haven't talked about that for a while. And it's like part of it is, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to start it. I didn't have the courage to start it with the Who song, like, who
Oh
are
yeah,
you?
yeah.
Right.
Who are you?
Um,
Yeah.
and part of personal branding, the way I started it, just talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
was looking inside yourself.
Mm.
And so it's not who are you from an external, like, job description point of view. It's who are you
Yeah,
inside.
yeah.
But then doing some external branding. I mean,
Mm.
we have to map. I think part of the branding is mapping who you are on the inside with what do you want to do on the outside. That might map to job descriptions, but it really maps to maybe role, functions or passions and things like that.
Yeah.
How close is that notion of branding to what you're talking about with identity, Jeff?
I think yeah, perfectly, like this with where I'm coming from. Because I've definitely dabbled with branding. We talked about it before we hit the record button. Trying to take my fascination with things in Australia and cute little creatures, and because people told me I'm happy and I smile and I bring joy, I thought, oh, I'll be the Agile Quokka, because Bob's out there,
Right.
the Agile Moose, and Diane Zajac already claimed the Agile Squirrel. I thought we could, Bob. I used to dream of us doing like the Rocky Bullwinkle thing, like Agile Moose and Agile Squirrel, but
Exactly.
you have the bear cat, and it's all good. But yeah, I've dabbled with that, but then I kind of let that go recently. I thought, no, as cute and fun as it is, um, I noticed a lot of folks that are doing some really good introspection and work on themselves, and they're getting these really great short statements about themselves on LinkedIn or their websites or their podcasts or whatever,
Yep.
where they're like, I'm about helping people reinvent themselves, or I'm about making an impact in the workplace, or I'm about just fun or happiness, whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, this is cool. Like, what are your core values? You take the time to kind of figure that out, and then start telling people your brand based on those things. Yeah.
Well, I think it's also like doing it. So there's
Oh yeah.
communicating it. But then are you walking? I'm just reacting. I'm thinking out loud. It's not just saying it in a
Uh-huh.
LinkedIn post. That's the beginning. But are you emanating that along the way
Yeah.
in your walk? Does it reinforce whatever it is you're saying? Like, if you say, I love helping people, if someone actually reaches out to you, do you deflect them or do you try to help them,
Yeah.
etc.? So, and that sort of builds, like, the brand building to me, or the identity building, is a continuous sort of loop that you're reaffirming.
Definitely, definitely. And I went through some failures in the workplace where it was helpful to learning more about myself, because I felt this moments of personal crisis of like, okay, I say that I'm about integrity, or I say I'm about this, that, or the other, but I realized I was so focused on what I thought was right that I compromised, or I set some of that other stuff I thought I valued, or I thought I'm about, just to try to get to an objective. I became too narrowly focused. I hope that resonates with people, that happens to us, um, and it can create fallout and things, but we retrospect, hopefully, and we learn from it. So yeah, I think I'm still going through that branding, rebranding, maybe type of an effect with those things
Right.
going on in my life. But the desire is to be as consistent as possible
Yeah.
around
We've talked about the potential of getting pickled
that.
in a company, right? And some value or mechanic that they have, you're in it for so long that it becomes a part of you, whether you want it to or not, and you have to
Mhm.
fight really hard to not let that happen. And I've been down that path as well.
Yeah.
where I've been kind of smacked in the head, and I look back, I'm like, dang it, that's not the type of person that I want to be, or the type of leader I want to be. Like, I got to do better. But those moments, just like you said, along the way, are those learning issues where you find out what really matters for you. And like, are you like, yeah, it doesn't matter? Or like, dang it, I'm not going to let that happen again. So what am I going to do about it? So I
Yeah.
think part of, and this is where I want to ask you, because this is your topic, is for me, it was finding what I liked, right? Like, there were a lot of things I did throughout the history of my career, and I was good at some, not good at others, but there were a handful of things that I was good at, and I had to try a couple different things to focus on, and then I finally landed on the thing that I get excited about. And I don't know if there's any other way than to iterate, kind of like us agile people do, to finding that thing. Bob has been doing this for so long, he might forget how he discovered that this is what he this is what he really likes. I don't know if that stone tablet is still out there, or what happened to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Finding what you really like. I'm pausing and letting that really sit with me because I think I'm still going through a lot there. I'm I'm still figuring out my what aspect of my identity is sort of closer to permanent and what I still need to like maybe be willing to change. And one of those things is I've always had like way too many interests, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. So it's like you say, Jeff, make a choice. Like if you could do whatever tomorrow, what would it be? And then my answer is usually like, well, it would be this, but here are the, 7 bullet points to, to include other stuff in there. Or like, Jeff, you're a musician. What's your favorite music? And oh, don't ask me that, because now I'm like, how do I narrow this down? There's so much great music. And so, yeah, I'm intrigued. I don't know that I can really give a great answer other than in the career area, at least of recent, I've narrowed it down to I can do a I think I can mash things up to where I show up in a way that says, hey, um, let's not be stuck in a rut. Let's not be pickled by our circumstances, situation, and so on. Uh, what do we need to do to kind of energize our work, energize our day, energize our week? These kinds of things. I'm just sort of trying to ask those questions in the workplace of myself and of those that I'm with, and just hoping that it makes a difference. So I guess I like the aspirations of making better happen, whatever that's supposed to look like. So the
right,
journey of doing that.
I mean, there's a connection too, as I'm thinking, as I'm listening and thinking, like validating. I'm coming back to brand.
Mm,
It's not just am I emanating my brand or am I emanating my identity, and am I doing that in a genuine way? But then the flip side of it is how people are receiving it. I mean, do they understand my brand?
mm,
Uh,
mm,
and do they align with my brand? So, or do they see value in my brand? So, as in a silly example, I may be emanating like Bob is an agilist. Bob is very principle oriented, um, and I may be talking to a CEO, and they don't care about that. I mean, they're actually maybe ignoring that emanation. They're looking at like how can he change? How can he earn his money and and transform the organization quickly? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a validation. I'm thinking there's a validation part. Am I in the right place? Here's my brand,
mm,
and are people receiving what I'm putting out?
mhm.
And is there alignment
Yeah.
as well? So it's reciprocal. There's two sides to it. When we're in organizations, like when we have roles in organizations, does that resonate with either of you in any way?
The validation, yeah, words always sit with me and resonate. But validation, that's definitely been a thing I keep circling back on, where I can tell it's important to me to have a sense of validation. Um, so I really like collecting feedback, and I've been trying to learn. I think you all have covered this in a number of ways, but ways to ask for feedback in a clear way so that you get some helpful feedback. You don't just say, "Hey, how was that?" But yeah, what what did I do well? What's one thing I did well? What's one thing I should change? So, and that helps those aspects of some validation, and then I was there was another thing you had there, and that thought slipped my mind. There was a different word other than validation, and I can't get it back. Oh boy, I'm like a goldfish. Where'd it go?
That's all
Well,
right.
one thing to
That's
me is alignment, right? There's an alignment part of that.
That was
Are
it.
we aligned?
Mm.
Are we? Am I in the right place? Am I aligned on my, my principles or whatever it is?
Yes,
Um,
yes. I
and
was.
it's not.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Oh, thanks, Bob. That's what it was. The alignment actually made me think of a other word that's been on my mind, is coherence. John Cutler had a good uh, post just the other day where that came out towards the bottom of what he was talking about. But yeah, like not so much that's become a buzzword in the workplace of let's align ourselves, or are we aligned, and people arguing, well, do we want to agree or just align, and and it just turns into like it just feels like this mess of semantics or something. But so I started experimenting with, okay, are things coherent so that we can move forward? And what do I mean by that? And I love using visuals, so I would kind of I learned things about light and sound and other things with waveforms and what dissonance looks like. But then when things are coherent, they're like these wavy parallel things, and so I'm like, this is we want our work metaphorically to feel like that, like we're flowing. So here's another aspect of flow. So yeah, so alignment for sure. My spin on it of late is just, are we understanding? Are we coherent, or are we not?
gotcha. Speaking of coherence and alignment, we're going to try and wrap this up.
Oh wow,
And
flies.
yeah, it does. It does. It goes fast. So the key takeaway that I'm hearing is pretty similar to the branding work that we've talked about in the past, is that you have an identity and it's okay if it evolves over time. It's okay if you're not at the final answer. In fact, there may never be a final answer, but it is one of those things where it sounds like you you have to maintain focus. Otherwise, it might turn into something that you maybe wouldn't prefer. So it is like branding, a thing that you have to keep front and center
Hmm.
and keep in check, but also drive forward as you learn, evolve, and grow.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And owning those things that you've been in the past that have shaped your own personal sort of journey, and becoming who you are today, like you just said so well. It's You're going to be something different in the future, and so just continue to let your identity have that sense of agility. One other quick thing that we didn't get to highlight as much is just, yeah, using like your leadership um, uh, archetypes, not stereotypes, but more of these archetypal things, where knowing how to be a certain kind of a leader at a certain kind of situation. And there's a lot that comes into that. And again, so your identity as a leader, like, I'm a leader. Well, what kind of a leader are you? And can you be a different kind of a leader for different situations? So that was something I hoped we'd bring out as well, but saved it, little nugget at the
Yep.
end.
Yep. That'll work. Robert, any final thoughts for you, my friend?
Well, I like the situation. I like that Jeff tied in the situational leadership nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we have to cut it off, but maybe that's a topic for another day, because there's so much nuance to that. The other thing I want to land with is this sort of alignment or congruence or whatever. So we're emanating stuff. Part of it is getting to the root of, am I in the right place?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll use a coach. A lot of times as a coach, folks will give you like this lip service, right? You're coaching the teams you're coaching. Oh, I love you. Jeff, you're doing great. Oh my God, I've never seen the team, sort of perform. And then if you ask that leader offline or that stakeholder offline, it's like, how's Jeff doing? And he's like, I don't know what Jeff does. Nice guy, right? But when I say validation, there's this sort of what people are saying,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also what are they doing? What are their behaviors? What are the organizational? And
Yeah.
that's incredibly, it's sort of alignment can be a very deep thing.
Yeah.
And you have to, when I say validate, I'm not saying they're bad and they're lying, but they sort of are. a lot of times folks avoid truth telling for a
Yes,
variety of reasons. And how do we sense, maybe it's a sense making activity, where how
absolutely.
do we sense that from alignment?
Yeah. And what you said,
So
they're
situational leadership and sense making.
totally. And when their behaviors are changing and you sense that you had something to do with it, that's a great way to know, to validate your impact for better or for worse.
Hey Jeff, I
Hey,
know it was short, but I enjoyed the
me
conversation.
too. Thank you.
And just thank you for coming. I really appreciate you. It's hard to be first. So you showed
Wow.
tremendous courage, and you just like you nailed it, my friend.
Oh, thank
You
you.
even
Well,
had a better Australian accent than Josh did.
yeah, good day, everybody. Well, I got a shout out to Becca Hiller out there. She prompted me with y'all's LinkedIn post, making this possible. And I'm like,
Cool.
I would love to talk to Josh and Bob. So, everybody out there, please, this is great. This was fun. We need to hear your
Yep.
So
voices and your experiences, people.
so we're going to try to close this, but have a three-way close. So everyone, we're going to stick a fork in this episode. So from beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina, I'm Bob Galen.
And from beautiful downtown Fuquay Varina, North Carolina, I'm Josh Anderson.
And from beautiful Franklin, Tennessee, I'm Jeff Davis.
All right.
Shake,
And
Hey,
bake.
bake. Take care, y'all.
All right.
take care, everyone. Thanks, guys.